Everyone, this is Dr. Katherine.Kelly, and it seems like the theme for this week with clients has been how fragile life is. And I've heard that's from at least a handful of clients. And, the news the other night was interesting too, because with all the tornadoes that came through the South, we've had lots of news coverage. And there was one person who mentioned very specifically, almost the exact same words, that watching the destruction around him helped him understand how fragile life is. And that's really been the topic of this week, because with the coronavirus ramping up, with all this information, with the elections being big, obviously yesterday with all the primaries, everything feels like it's ramping up. And people's anxiety is ramping up, people's need for control is ramping up. And that's really what I've been trying to press upon people, is the whole idea that it is human nature to want to control something. It is human nature. And the blessing and the challenge of our coverage is the idea that news coverage, and media coverage, is we have this instant access to information. We have this instant, from around the globe, access of what's happening, and then it kind of ramps us up. And so I'm trying to help people understand that in some ways we have a lot more control than we used to. But that still we have control. Let me clarify this. We have more control than we used to, because we know what's happening around the world. We know that there is stuff that coronavirus around the world, all the CDC reports, all of the reports from around the world. We have more control than we used to. 30, 40 years ago, we had no social media. We didn't have the quick response international coverage. And so it's interesting how we perceive, how our human reactions are becoming very overwhelming and stressful, and boy, I don't even know what other words to put in there. But we have to remember, we actually have more control than we used to. We have more access to medical care. We have more access to be able to create antiviral medications. We have, it's really interesting what's happening in the human condition. Now, I'm not saying don't take these things seriously. We do have to take them seriously. And because we have this instant access, we can take them seriously in a different way. But this goes back to something my mother used to say. It's like, well, if you don't know what you're worrying about, why are you worrying? And I use that with clients a lot. And we only have a bit of information of what we can be worrying about. Now, North Carolina got its first diagnosed case of coronavirus, and the person had traveled to Seattle to visit someone in that nursing home that has had all the illnesses and the deaths. And they're in isolation. News said this morning that they're doing fine. But of course, boy, that comes close to home. And again, we have to look at this perception of what it's doing to our soul, what it's doing to our human condition. Now, the need for control, like I said earlier in this video, is natural. It's the ego's way. It's the ego's way of protecting us, is to want to control something. And the thing we have to remember is we have so much more control than we used to. We have hand sanitizer. We have the ability to wash our hands. We have the knowledge to wash our hands. We have the knowledge to be able to wear these masks. We have the knowledge, and I'm going to go to the elections, we have more knowledge about how to understand the intentions of candidates. We have much more control, and yet our anxiety is up anyway. We have so much anxiety swirling around. So turning this back to the soul, we kind of have to think about what is it at that depth? What is it, that deepest level of us, that we need to pay attention to? My dog is drinking water. I apologize for any background sound. We have to think about, what is it doing to us? What is it trying to message to us? The very first client that brought the coronavirus up on Monday, it was my 9 o'clock client, and she was very concerned about it, very, very, very concerned, and trying to figure out how she would handle work if she had to be out, if it hit her family, how it would hit her family, what she would do. And I tried to, again, to impress upon her the whole idea of there must be something meaningful to this that is stirring within her, that is making her want to pay attention to this. So yes, on the face value, we've got things to be concerned about. We have to look at the coronavirus. We have to look at what's going on in the electoral situation right now. We have to look at all of the weather that's happening. We have to look at all those things. But anything, I want to remind you this, and if anything is stirring, if anything is feeling uncomfortable within you, it is your soul's way of saying, hey, look at me, listen, what is meaningful? What is feeling threatened? What is it that I need to do in order to ground myself and be mindful and push forward? So, so I just want to remind you, any emotional discomfort, any stress, any anxiety, any worries, anything that is coming up, it's that way of your soul getting your attention to take stock in your life and make sure you're living your life in the way that you want to do it. Because if something does happen, if a tornado comes through and obliterates your house, if an illness comes in, if there's a death, if there's something else that is very catastrophic to you, it's really important to live your life without as much regret as possible. You know, it's that whole idea of, am I living my life the way I need to be living it? And I think that is the real cue here, is the people that have come in who have been super worried about the virus. It's really kind of pushed them to go, oh, well, gosh, am I, and granted, I'm nudging them to do this, am I living my life the way I would want to? Because when there's a threat of illness or death, that is a threat to our mortality. That is a threat to, wow, if I had something happen today, would I have lived my life the way that I wanted to live it? I really kind of get the feeling like 2020 is going to be pushing us and has been pushing us to align our lives even more with authenticity. You know, and I'm talking about this a lot with folks is, are you living the life you want? Are you letting other things run your life? Are you letting things get in the way? Again, I'm not saying don't take coronavirus seriously. Don't take the electoral situation seriously. What I'm saying is take stock in your life and see what's working and what's not working. Because if life is so fragile, the only thing you have control over is how you lead your life. And I want to make sure I say that again. If life is feeling fragile for you, the only thing you have control over is whether or not you're living your life the way you want to. So you do have more control than you think you do. And it's amazing how we let go of that when our worries come in, when our stresses come in, when our wounds come in. And so it just felt very important to talk about this today because, again, it's the panic that's out there is about a sense of a loss of control. And yet we really, at a reality basis, we have so much more control than we ever did. We have better medical care. We have better access to know, where the coronavirus is. If we didn't have social media, if we didn't have the kind of news we have today, we would not know, and we'd be exposing ourselves or to it. Or this person that's contained in Wake County would probably not know to stay home and take care of themselves. So we have to reframe our need for control. We have to reframe where our anxiety is coming from. Now, you've heard me talk about these three things before, and I'm going to press this throughout this year because I don't think people are living their lives the way that they feel like they really want to be living them. But you've probably heard me say before that whatever you're doing, if it's not necessary, then why are you doing it? So that's question number one. Is it necessary? Question number two is it meaningful? If it's not meaningful, why the heck are we doing it? Question number three is it feeding your soul? So when you are reassessing to see whether or not you're living your life the way that you want to be living or need to be living it to not feel fragile, just ask those three questions. Is it necessary for me to worry about this in the way that I'm worrying about it? Number two, am I worrying about this in a meaningful way? And part three, is it feeding my soul? And I'm going to answer that no for most of you. If it's not feeding your soul to really worry about this stuff, then why are we worrying about it? So yes, we have to take things seriously, but we also have to assess, why is it pressing on us? Why is it stirring us? Whatever the it is. Why is it that these things are getting to us in the way that they're getting to us? Because reality is we have more control than we ever did. So this is that thing where we have to start looking at our soul's wisdom. Our soul is trying to get our attention when we feel that discomfort. Our soul is trying to shake us to say, if you feel like life is fragile, then are you living your life the way that you want to be living it? a lot of the healthcare practitioners that I see as clients, it's really been interesting to watch this because a couple of them have come in very concerned saying, and one in particular is a physician, and she's very concerned about it. She's making all these plans for what she would do. Very next day, I had another healthcare practitioner come in, and she's not worried about it at all. She's like, well, you know what? We know what we're dealing with. We know what we have to look for. She said, and so it's really interesting because both of them come from very, very different places in terms of kind of their concern and where they feel like they are in life. And, and, and so it makes me realize that this is really about a deeper issue. This is about the soul. This is about the essence of who we are and what we need to do in order to lean into the discomfort and really grow with it, rather than panicking and losing ourselves in the midst of all of this. So whether we talk about the coronavirus, whether we talk about what's going on in the politics right now, whether we talk about the weather, whatever it is, it's that sense of being fragile that we really need to look at. So I would love to hear what you are thinking about this. I would love to know what's resonating for you. I would love to know what you're being challenged with right now, because this is stuff that needs to be processed. This is stuff that needs to be we need to take stock inside to see, why has this threatened me so much? If I'm already prepared, if we know as much as we know, what is it that is really getting to me at that deepest level? So I would love to hear from you, like I said. So make some comments here. Feel free to send me an email if you are on my email list. My newsletter from this month was all about how to stay grounded when you feel like you're living in a very unsettled world. And so if you want to read more about that, feel free to go to my website, www.Dr.KatherineT.Kelly.com. If it's not up on the list yet, it will be, because it just came out. So hope you have a wonderful day. Think through this. Think about what you can do to feel more grounded and more and less fragile through this process. But take stock to see, are you living your life the way that you need to be living it in order to calm some of those fears that you have. All right, have a great day, and I will be back soon. Bye-bye.